her a spay. So she can't go outside and be a hoe. Mama ain't gonna raise no one's babies, okay? With that being said, you may hear her throughout the video. As always, before we get started, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below. And if you have your own Reddit-like story that you would like to share with me, make sure to email this email. Right here. Oh my god. Can you hear my congestion? Allergy season. I'm fighting for my life. And I took a Zyrtec, which is useless. The story does not have to be your own. It could be your mama's, your daddy's, your boyfriend's, your girlfriend's, your sister's, brother's. Just let me know the details when you email me. And lastly, if you're feeling generous and you want a dip, I have nail polish on my finger. Dip your favorite sleep dress. This is how you do so. I recommend the Cash App option over the tip jar option because I still haven't figured out that tip jar issue. So yeah, anything is greatly appreciated. Okay, that's enough from me. Let's get into this Reddit thread. Tonight's topic was requested, so I see you. We're gonna be reading some alien experiences. So the first one is as follows. This is a family story I've heard only twice. I can't remember how it was brought up the first time, but the explanation was very vague. So I asked again a few months later when the family had come together at the cottage during the summer. They seemed kind of iffy talking about it, but provided more details. They live in Ukraine, but took a trip to Turkey sometime in the 90s. They had rented a little cottage there that was far enough into the countryside to be considered fairly remote. Long story short, one evening the dogs outside started going absolutely crazy, barking viciously, and just overall behaving erratically. One of them, my grandmother's brother, I believe went outside to check on what was going on, and saw what they only could describe as a UFO nearing their cottage, pretty high up in the sky but lowering a bit as it came closer. He called for the rest of the family to come see, and to this day they can still confirm what they saw. Well, the ones that are still alive, at least. They said it was triangle-shaped and had 3 lights, one in each corner. When it got seriously close to the house, they began to panic and ran back inside. The very walls were shaking. Dishes were breaking from the force of the vibrations going throughout the walls and floor. And the dogs outside were barking louder than ever. It hovered over the cottage for several minutes before ascending back up and disappearing. These are all people who are very conservative and rational, and they hate discussions regarding the supernatural, so I have no doubt in my mind that they are telling the truth. That's a good one. I feel like I've read that before. If I'm a repeat story offender, I apologize. I was 12-ish in the mid-90s. I was visiting my aunt in the countryside. I'm there just chilling in the living room with my cousins, and my father rushes in. Yo, there is a flying saucer in the sky. None of us believe him, so he just grabs me and drags me outside. Out in the street, my mom, my aunt, and all the neighbors are out pointing at the sky. There was a light, identical to a very bright star, but moving ridiculously fast and doing some crazy movements and sharp turns. I watched it for a few minutes and got bored and went back inside. What the fuck is wrong with you? What the fuck is wrong with you? You see a UFO, a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and you go inside. Unbelievable. I don't care if you're 12 or 70. The common sense is to stay and watch it. But from afar, of course. neighbors at the shelter, and they all saw the same thing, so I knew I wasn't going crazy. It just stopped over I-40 for a minute or two, and just disappeared. Holbrook is a weird-ass place, and that wasn't the only encounter I had there. I'm gonna search Holbrook, Arizona. How y'all living over there, other than like the aliens? How cute. They have dinosaurs. The next one says, not my story, but my father-in-law swears he was abducted on a camping trip in the northern Alps with 4 other people. They hiked up near a lake and set up a campsite and set up camp. He says they all remember swimming, then eating dinner, but no one remembers cleaning up camp or going into their tents. They woke up about 10 yards away from the original site, in the exact formation they had set up at the camp, but all the little stuff was in the same spot. There was a fire in the middle of the original area, but not in the new one. They pulled out measuring tape my father-in-law had in his backpack and measured the distance between the stakes of the tent poles, and it was the exact distance between all the tent poles from where they originally were and the new area. And before anyone says anything, my father-in-law is a super light sleeper and doesn't drink or do drugs, has no history or symptoms of mental illness, and was the first one awake. He still refuses to go hiking on that trail to this day. It's an easy hike, so he isn't trying to be lazy to get out of it. The next story says, I'm not sure if this counts as alien or not, but I definitely saw something I can't explain at all about 5 years ago, and I've been dying to tell this story in a thread. About 5 years ago, me and 2 other friends were on our way back from the Warped Tour in Maryland, being driven by one of my friend's moms because none of us had a car we could drive yet. It was almost night. The sun was still kind of out, and it wasn't that dark yet, and we were driving on a 2-lane highway that had trees on either side of the road and a median in the middle of the lanes. Basically, some creature ran out from the trees onto the other side of the highway, jumped the median, and sprinted towards the trees on our side. We almost hit the thing, and our friend's mom had to slam on the brakes, and everyone in his... I'm so shook. Jesus Christ. And our friend's mom had to slam on the brakes, and everyone in the car was screaming our heads off, not because it was a look out for that deer situation, but because this was the scariest fucking thing I've ever seen. It was black, had long, gangly limbs, and moppy black, long, stringy hair. This thing moved so fucking weird. I could see it clear as day. It galloped so awkwardly. Did not run at all like a deer or anything of the sort. When it jumped off the back 2 legs and landed again on the back 2 legs before coming down and galloping across the road. Everyone in the car said the same thing, which was, what the fuck was that thing? To this day, I am convinced it was a demon or an alien or an escaped medical experiment. It was large and terrifying, and the way it moved was like anything I've ever seen in my life. I wish I had more details, but sadly, that's all I remember, and I've asked my friends and my friend's mom about it numerous times over the years, after the fact, and it still gives everyone shivers. Somebody asked if you could draw it, and one of the commenters commented this. I can't. Something like that, but without the This happened to me when I was 10 years old in Calgary, Alberta in 1970. I was walking home from school, cutting across the school sports field. Our house wasn't far. We lived across the street from the school. There wasn't any other kids around since I had stayed late for volleyball practice. And the rest of the students had gone home 45 minutes earlier when school let out for the day. It was about 4:30 in the afternoon. Something caught my attention from the corner of my eye, and I stopped and turned to the right to look at it. Floating directly above a house facing the schoolyard was a large UFO. I was in the middle of the football field, so this is about 60 to 70 yards distance from where I stood. The UFO is big and almost touching the roof of the house. It is completely centered on the house, but it is so big. It also is above the house on the left and right. The lots there are 50 feet wide, which puts the UFO at about 150 feet across and perhaps 25 to 30 feet tall. It is very bright, giving off a harsh white light, which is difficult to look at since it hurt my eyes. I look away, back towards my house, and see a car and a motorcycle on the side street which intersects the street with the UFO. The street is about half a block away, and I remember being surprised and confused that the drivers are not reacting to the UFO, which clearly must be visible to them. And so obvious, since it's so bright. But the traffic continues as normal. At that point, I become aware that something is forcing me to turn my head back toward the UFO. I'm turning and my field of view is changing, but I'm not the one doing it. I struggled to turn away, but I simply can't control any of my body. I remember feeling a panic. Then the next thing I remember, I'm walking into my house. It is about 9:30 at night and dark outside. I can't recall anything of the last 5 hours. My parents were furious with me for being so late. Apparently, my parents and my brother had been trying to find me for hours. A voice thought in my head tells me to tell them that I'm not feeling well and I need to go to bed. I have no idea where that voice thought came from, but I do exactly as it suggests and run upstairs to my room and go to bed. Oh, Jesus Christ, this sounds like a TV show plot or a movie plot. Like, what? What? The next day, I still can't seem to explain what happened, and my mother is even more angry with me since my new school shoes are ruined. Since the tops of them are all scuffed and dirty, like I was dragged face down across the ground with my feet still dragging. I told my older brother what happened, and they suggested I keep quiet about it since nobody would believe me. Good advice, as it turns out, since in the many years since, most of the people I've shared the story with don't really know what to say afterwards. Many years later, I was looking at my old school workbook from that time, and they are full of drawings of UFOs, all the same design, and with more detail than I can recall from memory. For example, in my memory I can't remember seeing any windows in the UFO since the lights were too bright to make out any details, but in my drawings there were these large round windows all around the UFO, some with faces looking out. Some people asked for drawings, and he posted this as an example. This is not his drawing, he just found this. The next story says, when I was in the 6th grade, I woke up one day with 4 very small holes on my upper right thigh. It looked like the skin had been cut out in perfect tiny circles, yet there was no blood. The circles were straight line and across my thigh horizontally, no more than 6 inches wide completely. I also felt very tired and couldn't remember what I had dreamt, which is weird was suddenly very alert, and when I threw my blanket off, my legs, I found all the holes were completely gone. No scabbing or scarring, or any trace of the circles on my thigh. I showed my mom and she just brushed it off as they healed like other cuts. I'm honestly not sure if this is related, but I do feel like there is a correlation. After this, I couldn't really comprehend math anymore. I had excelled at math all my life. But after this incident, it was like numbers had no meaning to me and I couldn't figure out simple equations. I went to an advanced school and had been learning algebra and geometry and was doing great. But then it was like poof. All my math knowledge and comprehension was gone. To this day I can't even do simple addition problems without double checking them. Wow. And then she later wrote, was most likely probed. Aliens might have taken my math smarts with them. The next story says, my fiance, boyfriend at the time, had just gotten home from work. He went into our kitchen and I walked through the bedroom and into the bathroom and just stopped for a moment. I had a weird feeling. I still can't really put a name to it. So I called him and asked him to come here. I walked out of the bedroom and as soon as we came within view of each other, that was it. The next thing we knew, we were both waking up, laying side by side on our bed, flat on our backs, on top of the blankets, and still fully dressed down to our shoes. 3 hours had gone by. It was so odd and disorientating. Why can't I say that word? Disorienting. And though we both just come to, we were extremely tired. We joked about the lost time at first, but the more we thought about it, the more weirder it became. This isn't proof or anything, but I've never been able to think of anything else it could have been. Before I even begin the next story, I just have a quick question for y'all. Yes or no? Would you like to see an alien in your lifetime? What that experience with them will be, I don't know, but would you like to see one? Or a UFO? Or are you good on that? I'm curious. I was camping in a campground in North Georgia with some friends. It was starting to downpour, so everyone left their tents in the woods and decided to rent one of the on-site cabins for everyone to sleep in. I decided I'd just sleep in my car because they wanted to stay up late and I was tired from kayaking all day. I woke up to the rain stopping and it was kind of cold in the car and I had forgotten my sleeping bag in my tent. I checked the cabin to see if there were any room or if there was any room left, and the light was on and everyone was fast asleep. It was around 3 a.m. I didn't want to squeeze in, so I decided to trek my way up to my tent in the dark with a small pen light. In order to get to my tent, I had to pass by everyone's that they left. Mine was the last one, and even then was 50 feet at least from the previous tent before then. I got in my tent, covered up with my sleeping bag, and prepared to catch the last few hours of sleep before sunrise. No more than 10 to 15 minutes from me getting in my tent, I began to hear light whispers right outside the tent door. They weren't in English, and to my recollection, indecipherable. Not any language I've ever heard at all. Just as the voices had started, 2 orbs appeared together outside the tent. They weren't the same glare as a flashlight, and both were of 2 different colors that, to the best of my ability, had no real distinct color, just colorful. The whispers outside the tent began arguing louder between each other, but in a hush tone, and as the whispers grew louder, the light began swirling around the tent, behind me, to the side, to the front, not in the movement that one could make with a flashlight, and at this point I realized no footsteps could be heard. Oh, I uncovered myself and knelt on the tent floor preparing for the zipper whispers stopped, and nothing but silence of an empty wood. I stood there as still as I could, and I didn't dare go outside the tent till the sun came up. It was and still is the scariest moment of my life. I hope this makes sense. I've never written it out before. Well, I would have pulled the sleeping bag over my head and died. Simple as that. Somebody else commented on this and said I had a similar experience happen to me when I was 13. When I was 13, I found my first love. Meanwhile, this person was being traumatized. That's crazy. I was home alone on our farm as my mom and sisters were at some sort of high school sports thing. I had just finished up the chores for the night and was heading back to our house, and I had to take off my mud-encrusted lace-up boots, which takes forever, and started listening to what I thought was my mom and sister talking. I remember thinking it was weird, as it really didn't sound like them. It really didn't sound like talking, actually. My brain knew somebody was talking in a very loud and annoyed way, but I don't remember actually physically hearing it or being able to decipher the language. I was also starting to get a bad feeling over the fact that I did not see somebody come home while I was outside. Obviously, somebody could have pulled in just as I went into our back mudroom, but I never heard either a car door close, the front door open, or the most damning, our psycho rat terrier start to bark. I finally pried my boots off my feet and headed inside. I called out hello as I passed through the kitchen heading towards the front door. Holy shit. The feeling that I just absolutely fucked up filled my chest and dumped ice straight into my heart. It felt like the time when I was facing an aggressive bull and the fence line was 100 feet away. My logical brain didn't know why I was fucked, but my instincts did. Because I'm lacking in survival instincts, however, I kept walking to the kitchen in order to see who was there. The voices were now arguing with each other, and I somehow knew they were talking about me. The idiot that was walking towards them. I eventually got to the breakfast bar that divided the kitchen from the front door area. There I could finally make my body stop walking and froze up. Hanging in the front of the door were two gray glowing orbs. The voices were very loud and angry now, but in a weird, muffled, screaming way. I knew it was loud, but my ears weren't picking it up. Within a second, both of them had stopped talking, twirled around each other several times, and then shot through the ceiling. I ended up sitting at the kitchen computer, staring at the blank monitor until I heard my mom and sister come to the front door about 15 minutes later. Growing up as a Bible kid, I would have literally thought the rapture was happening, and all hell would have broke loose. Literally. I was about 8 or 9, and my mom tells me we were going on a day trip to meet her high school friend. Cool. I grabbed my Game Boy Advance. Yes. Because I know my mom's friend has kids my age, and I wanted to show them my racing game I had. I overheard this from my mom talking with a friend at the house. They told me to leave the room because they needed to talk about adult things. Little innocent, curious me wonders what exactly are adult things that I can't hear. We're going to throw some new juicy cuss words out. Well, mom's friend had a little girl who would sleepwalk at night. Started when they moved into their new house in Northern California. It was a suburban area, but not too suburban. New neighbors with a lot of empty homes and forest patches in between each community. She was about 4 years old, and they found her one night in the backyard just sitting there. After that incident, they decided they needed to lock her in the room at night and bar up the windows so that she doesn't end up in the woods nearby or anywhere besides her room, really. The story. Mom's friend and husband woke pissed off. Dad sees two guys in coats walking down the street. He yells at them and starts sprinting at them. Mom's friend says coat guys didn't react at all. Coat guys turned a corner. Dad turns the corner. But they're gone. Mom and Dad check and lock the windows, no tampering. They notify the police, who pretty much say there's not anything that they could do, but they'll keep their eye out. Evan's sleepwalking 4-year-old daughter is fine, isn't scared at all, just tired and goes back to bed. After that, my mom didn't understand why I was scared as hell that night. She believes she was abducted, but refuses to tell me what happened. Even my dad tells me he can't tell me the story. He says it's for my mom to share if she wants it to be shared. But overhearing this, when I wasn't supposed to hear it, had me tripped out as a kid. What in the X-Files shit is this? Oh my god, that's horrifying. Oh boy, here we go. This is going to be long and very hard to explain. And to clarify, I didn't think I was abducted, but my friend did. So I was about 15. Every night I'll call Jay, and I would sneak out about midnight and go home around 4 to 5 in the morning, before our parents would wake up for work. On one particular night, we had just snuck out, and it was about 1 a.m. We headed to my backyard, laid on the trampoline, and stared at the stars and talked, like we always did. Now, if you're in a room right now, and you look around, you'll see the definite four corners where your ceiling and walls meet. You can see how square they turn. Edge of wall, sharp turn. Second wall, same thing with your ceiling. You can see each individual flat surface. The sky did that. It went from staring at the stars to looking like a cube in the sky. From the southeast corner of the sky came this giant UFO, and I mean huge. It took up a quarter of the entire sky. We both stared at it in dead silence. It didn't make any noise, even as it moved, and while it spun, it was only hovering straight. The spinning didn't move like you'd imagine a frisbee doing. The size just turned while it moved. I guess what it looked like doesn't matter, but Jay and I had our eyes dead set on it. We didn't say a word. We didn't point to the other person as it began coming towards us. We both flipped over. Again, no hints, no talking, no eye contact, and total sync. We flipped onto our stomachs and stayed as flat and quiet as we could. Now ducking from something sounds totally normal and instinct, but that's not what this was. It was literally almost like telepathy. I can remember us having a mental conversation of stay flat and it won't see us. Don't move. We watch it make a weird angled C shape across the sky, and although it felt totally in slow motion, it could have been a few minutes because I think both of us held our breath the entire time. Now the weirdest part, as soon as it got out of sight, boom, daybreak. We had literally just gotten to the yard, and I know it was 1:15 a.m. because I checked, but the minute we felt released from laying flat, it was bright, like 7:30, 8 a.m. bright. I didn't remember talking to him at all afterwards, other than making eye contact, and then making a break for our homes before our parents noticed we weren't there. A few weeks, even months, maybe, is a little bit of a stretch, and she watches too many Discovery Channel documentaries, but the weird loss of time still irks me. Do you know what we saw was 100% real? Aliens. I don't know. Abduction. I don't know. I hate to say it. But I think they saw you. I was home alone in this little house I lived in the middle of nowhere. It was probably around 2 a.m. and I was just listening to music, enjoying having the place to myself for a change, when all of a sudden, my dog started going crazy. Normally, when someone pulls into the driveway or comes to the back door, they go to the door they heard the noise beyond and peek through the blinds to see who it is. But this night, they were running around the house from door to door, barking louder than they ever do. When I stood up to go see what the hell was going on, I noticed the whole house seemed to be lit up with a blue light. Turning into the living room, it became obvious. It was illuminating in each window. I put on my shoes to go outside and see who was out there, but by the time I got out there, the light had faded away. There was no sound of a car engine or really anything, and where I lived, you could hear a car coming from a mile away. I felt a chill run down my spine, but I had the weirdest sense of fight or flight, where neither option seemed viable. Like I was frozen to the spot. I wanted to turn around and get back inside, and then I just was. Right back in the chair I was listening to music in. As if I just blinked, and there I was. About 20 years ago, I was walking home from the shops with my dad, and we stopped to watch some really odd lights in the sky. There were around 2 lights, slightly bigger than the stars, zooming around and orbiting each other, making figure eights, etc. And then they stopped moving, got bigger and bigger until bright lights filled the sky, and then they were gone. We carried on our journey home. We hadn't stopped for more than 5 minutes. The whole journey should have been 20 minutes. When we got home, my mom was freaking out. We had been gone for 65 minutes. Our watches were both still working, but were 45 minutes behind every clock in the house. She had neighbors' friends out looking for us. I don't know what happened to us or what we saw. Maybe nothing. They're out there. Ooh, boogity woogity. Okay, that's all I have for you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and to comment down below. Do you believe in aliens? Would you want to encounter aliens in your lifetime? Even if you don't know how the encounter would go or what it entails, let me know. And if you have your own Reddit-like story that you would like to share with me to read in a future video, make sure to email this email right here, which is also available in the description down below, along with my Cash App and my tip jar information. If you're feeling generous and you want to tip your favorite sleeptress, then that's how you do so. And I recommend the Cash App option over the tip jar option. As I said before, I'm still trying to figure this shit out. And until somebody actually successfully tips me on tip jar, we're not here for her, okay? So